Welcome to Twin Whistles. I'm your host, Joe Chapp, and today we'll be talking about the Detroit Lions and the comment that Louis Riddick made about the Detroit Lions being Super Bowl contenders. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe below, and we will keep you entertained with Detroit Lions content throughout the year and Detroit sports content. So I heard Louis Riddick's blurb. I don't watch SportsCenter because I really don't respect a lot of the ESPN on-air talent besides Louis Riddick, besides Ryan Clark. Scott Van Pelt's great too. So I heard him say that, Jared Goff, the Jared Goff that's in Detroit is a different Jared Goff that was in LA. Totally agree. I couldn't agree more. It's a different Jared Goff. He has the trust of the coaches. The coaches trust him to run a game plan, something that he didn't have in LA. And you can kind of see why with this Matthew Stafford stuff. Ask him to take a pay cut. Sean McVay has problems. But anyways, he mentioned the Detroit Lions being Super Bowl contenders because Jared Goff is a really good quarterback and he's not the same quarterback he was in LA. So I wanted to take it a step further. Are the Detroit Lions Super Bowl contenders? And as I look at it, I could see the path to where the Detroit Lions could be Super Bowl contenders. I absolutely can. But when you look at the NFC and you look at the two teams that are going to be standing in your way, the 49ers and the Eagles, and I know the 49ers don't have a settled quarterback right now, so that's a little bit of an issue, but I think they will get it together, and they're extremely well coached. When you get to the playoffs, it's about coaching, and I think that between the Eagles, the 49ers, and the Lions, I think those are the three best coached teams in the NFC. But in my opinion, when you're talking about Super Bowl contenders, legitimate Super Bowl contenders, you talk about four teams and two in each conference. So you go Eagles, 49ers, Chiefs, Bengals. Those are the four teams I think that are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. The rest are up for debate. So when I look at the Detroit Lions, obviously they did get better. They got better in the secondary with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, with Cameron Sutton, with Emmanuel Mosley. They got better in the linebacking core with Jack Campbell. You assume that he will be pretty damn good. Not off the hop, but maybe as the season goes on. Broderick Martin, you're hoping becomes a really good player. You re-sign John Kaminsky. You're going to have another year of Aiden Hutchinson development, James Houston development, Josh Pascal development, a full year of Romeo and Charles Harris. You're going to have a lot of things at your disposal. But the one thing that really separates the Detroit Lions being legitimate Super Bowl contenders for me is, do they stop the run? Because earlier in the year, and you've seen it with the Carolina Panthers game when they played the Carolina Panthers, there were times where they could not tackle. They could not stop the run. And that was one of the main issues I had with the Detroit Lions going into the offseason. They really didn't address the run game in particular, and you're hoping that Lee McNeil and that defense gets better with a guy like Broderick Martin, a big man that's just going to eat up space, and he can stop the run. So that's what you're hoping for, but hope isn't a strategy. When I look at the Detroit Lions, I think on the offensive side, they are a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. The offensive side, they are a legitimate Super Bowl contending team. There's one part of the team that I can't gloss over at this point. I can't gloss over the run defense. I think that's a critical part, especially when you're playing the guys like San Francisco. You're playing teams like Philadelphia. You're playing teams like, you got to assume Seattle will be in there. You got to assume that Dallas will be in there with Tony Pollard. You're going to have to stop the great running backs. And the great running backs and the quarterbacks that can scramble have gave Detroit fits. I need to see if Detroit is actually a good defending run team before I say they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Because I feel like it's totally dishonest for me to come here and say the Detroit Lions are a Super Bowl contender because I think they got better, which they did. The Detroit Lions did get better. But I can't specifically say that they're a Super Bowl contender, because if I came on here and said they're just a Super Bowl contender, and you guys that there's some might think, oh yeah, you're right, and there's some that are saying you're wrong. If I just said that for views, that's totally wrong on my part. I don't do shit for views. I don't care about views. Well, I do care about views, but that's beside the point. I want to be honest with my audience. And when I look at this Detroit Lions team, there's one thing I look at when I say, God, like that could be the Achilles heel. And until I see what they do, in the regular season until I see it on the field. I can't specifically say that they're a Super Bowl contender. If I went simply off just the offense, I think they're a Super Bowl contender. If I went simply off the secondary and the pass rush, I would say they're a Super Bowl contender. So you're going to put them in that Super Bowl threat category, where they're a team that you think can get to the Super Bowl, but ultimately they have to prove one thing right. Every team besides the teams that I mentioned, the 49ers, the Eagles, the Chiefs, and the Bengals, they have one area where they're not good. And that one area is a critical failure. It's a flaw that they have that really doesn't benefit them when you get to the playoffs, because the game slows down. It's about time and possession and coaching decisions. And I really do think the Detroit Lions have one of the best coaching staffs in the NFL. But I just can't put myself to gloss over the run game, the run defense, because I have to see that for myself. I have to see that in preseason action. And look, I got to see what Broderick Martin looks like. I got to see what this team looks like on the run defensive side, and see what the scheme changes that Aaron Glenn made. You know, like I said, it'd be totally dishonest for me to come on here and, pat asses and say, the Detroit Lions are Super Bowl, they're going to Super Bowl bound. I just can't do that to my audience. I think that's totally ridiculous, and I think that's just dishonest. So I'm not going to do that. What I will say, though, I do think the Detroit Lions are a Super Bowl contender. I think that their offense is top 5. I think that their passing defense is going to be a lot better. I think they're going to have a top 15 defense. Now, where are we getting to the issue of, are they a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Is the run defense. I can't gloss over it. That's one of the fatal flaws. And when you get into the playoffs, sometimes those little 2-yard runs are like they really mean a lot in those tight games. So I need to see the run defense first before I come to a conclusion on the Detroit Lions run Super Bowl chances, because listen, we are in rarefied air. This team has been historically bad for most of my life. So we actually have a team that is worth watching, and they're going to be a pretty damn good team, I believe. But I can't convince myself to say that they are Super Bowl contenders, because, like I said, that one area that I can't gloss over. I can't gloss over. What do you think below? Let me know below. Do you think the Detroit Lions are Super Bowl contenders? And if you do, we can have a conversation about it. If you don't, we can have a conversation about it. So comment in this comment section and tell me, do you think the Detroit Lions are truly Super Bowl contenders like Louis Riddick says? We will see you in the next video.